Hello, welcome back. I'm John.
I'm Sierra.
And this is
And They Were Readers.
Today, we want to give you what we're calling a lit fic starter kit because we read so much literary fiction, and we want you to as well.
Yeah.
If you please.
Which I think a lot of you please. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first, let's talk about what literary fiction is, because there's not a super good concrete definition for what it is.
And, disclaimer, we have no literary degrees,
Good
no
calls.
English degrees, no degrees that say we should say what literary fiction is.
Yep.
So we're going to the internet.
Yeah. As one does.
Yeah. I'm sure some of you have definitions in the comments and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, and let us know. So the AI overview, because it's 2025, says literary fiction is a category of fiction that emphasizes style, character, and theme over plot, often exploring the human condition and complex social or political issues.
Which makes so much sense for me.
So much sense,
Yeah.
because how many times do we have to tell you that the book has no plot? We have to warn you.
Mm-hmm.
Prime example, Orbital.
Oh, yeah.
No plot.
But, themes of the human condition.
Correct, yeah.
Of societal and political issues.
Yeah.
Not really political, more like social issues.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Same with a lot of Sally Rooney's books, but we'll get there.
We'll get there.
So what we're gonna provide to you today is a list of lit fic books that kind of helped us get into reading,
100%.
and we think will help you get into reading literary fiction specifically, if that's what you're looking for. But you know that we don't strictly read literary fiction.
No.
We read romance, we read historical fiction, we read fantasy. I'm reading a great one right now. Yeah, we're all over the place.
I often find myself, though, if I'm reading outside of my genre, it's still most likely literary.
I see
So,
what you're saying.
I read a lot of literary historical fiction.
That's
I
fair.
read a lot of literary sci-fi.
Yeah.
If I'm reading outside of my genre, I want it to be literary, talk about the human condition, social political issues, have really strong themes, or concerns itself with the things that are really important to me when I'm reading.
Yeah.
Which is not true for everyone. Everyone reads for a different reason, and that's why I tend to read. So,
Yeah.
I don't actually venture outside of literary fiction very often.
That's fair. I have been.
Yeah, you haven't.
Yeah.
So that's more true for you, I think.
Yeah. I feel like at least every time so far I read a typical romance, I know pretty well that I'm outside of literary fiction.
No, and that's true. It's
Yeah.
romantic comedy type vibes. Yeah, for sure.
So let's get into it.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about was the... I don't know if I want to talk about it first. I'm going to change it.
Okay.
So the first one that I want to talk about is one of the first books that got me back into reading.
Yeah.
This was a book that John recommended to me the summer that we started reading as a friend group, but we didn't know each other. None of us knew we were reading until all of a sudden we all were, and wait a second,
We just kind
you
of
read?
got there.
Spider-Man style, right? And so that book is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. That book, I was like, whoa, book, I can breeze through books, but it can still be really rich in its writing and also talk about really important issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pop off.
Yeah. I was shook. That was one of my first books getting back into reading, and I didn't know that books were like that.
Yeah.
I was like, the plot was also good. This is one that had good plot, good prose, good commentary. Yeah.
Those were categories. Plot, prose, and commentary.
Yeah. The issues that it covered were real and sorry,
Hey.
I swallowed the word. And, tangible was what I was gonna say. And I just remember feeling so much. There were so many characters and so many moving parts, but you could feel all of them.
Yeah.
So I think Celeste Ng did a great job on that. And it makes sense that if you ever read Everything I Never Told You, you can see her progression as an author and the way she's building her craft. And it was incredible. And the show is really good. It has Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington. Highly recommend. You can't go wrong with those two.
You really can't.
Yeah.
And he's a little upset at me that it's been so many years and I've not seen it.
So many years, and it won't hit the same anymore because you've read the book so long ago.
Maybe it'll hit better because I might have forgotten some things.
Maybe.
Okay. The next one I want to talk about was on that same trip that he gave me Little Fires Everywhere. I read this book, and I actually read it before Little Fires Everywhere. and it was Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami.
Mm.
So I had not gotten into reading it. I started reading nonfiction, and it was like a few months into my nonfiction journey. And a friend of mine was moving away from our city and giving away a ton of books. So like she had Brothers Karamazov on her shelf, and she had Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. And I was like, oh, someone I love like really enjoyed Murakami's books, so like let me just like give it a try. So I grabbed it. Okay, read Murakami.
At your own discretion.
At your own discretion. He doesn't like write women super well, and we like talked about it in the book community of how we like maybe don't recommend Murakami anymore. But I thought it would be important to mention it here because it was the first time that I read words on a page and saw the beauty in the words themselves. And discovering that that was something that can happen with reading that could not necessarily happen on television changed my life.
Yeah.
I became a reader. In fiction. I was like totally down for the nonfiction stuff at that point because I was like, these essays are so insightful and they talk about the human condition. But I was like, whoa, fiction can talk about the human condition sometimes better than nonfiction can because it brings you into a world and talks about that experience. And so Norwegian Wood is an excellent, like, I would say the most normal of Murakami's books from what I've heard. So it's a good one to like start off with if you wanted to get into Murakami. Like I would start with Norwegian Wood.
Yeah, the Murakami that I read is Kafka on the Shore. And when I read that, if you've ever seen New Girl, I was reading it and I was like, I'm on drugs. Everything was so out there. And I was also new to literature.
Yeah.
So I kept hearing people talk about Kafka. And I'm like, oh, Kafka, the main character in Kafka on the Shore. Not Franz Kafka.
All right. Early on in our journey, we also read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Yeah.
And by early on, you read it first.
I did.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. I think the way that one is formatted, if you know, you know, it's like interview style and like investigative. And it is like storytelling within storytelling. And I loved that. Also loved the issues that would covered. It talks about a whole span of issues, mainly women in like the spotlight in fame and media, but then also like the inner workings of their relationships and what it looks like to be queer in that time because it was like what, the 80s?
I don't remember.
Okay. And also like racial issues.
50s, like Marilyn Monroe time.
No,
like
50s
Clark Gable.
feels too old.
I don't know.
Anyway.
60s?
Anyway, it was in the mid to late 1900s.
It was in the 20th century.
Yeah. And I loved it. And I still think they should make it a movie.
I do too.
I feel like they could do a good job. They could do a really bad job.
They really could.
But they could do a good job.
And to be clear, all of these books for me are not 5-star reads.
That's true.
They're in the 4s for sure.
Yeah.
But they're not 5-star. And it's not because like these books aren't good. They're just not the best. But these are the best to get into literary fiction, I think.
Yeah.
Does that make sense what I'm saying? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, next we have... Ooh, what do we want to talk about next? This one? Or okay.
I think this author in general is a good entryway into literary fiction. And that's Fredrik Backman. The book that I first read from him is Anxious People. That one, it's wild. If you don't know, it's about like an open house turned hostage situation. And there's all these different people that are in the space. And you kind of get their backgrounds and the way that their lives interconnect and like they would never know, and how small the world is and how shared our problems and the human condition can be.
Whoa.
And at the end of it, you're just like, wow, people are good. Sometimes.
He says hesitantly. Yeah.
But the way he writes is very approachable, while also being like deep and touching.
Right.
Another one of his books is A Man Called Ova. And also Beartown, which I haven't read yet, but I've heard really good things about, and I really want to get into it.
Okay, no, one of my best friends, she was like, I think you need to read A Man Called Ova. She loved it, and she's like, it's right up your alley, and it's because it's literary fiction, and she doesn't read literary fiction as much as me, like, she's more in the sci-fi fantasy world, and I'm in the literary fiction world, and she was like, I read this, and this is for you.
Yeah, A Man Called Ova is cute.
Okay, so that's kind of the beginning of our reading journey, if I read this correctly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, one more from our beginning.
Oh.
Ready?
I know what I Sorry.
The Stallion. I love Keke Palmer with like so much of my heart. More of my heart than I realized. I love Keke Palmer.
Iconic.
Yeah, true Jackson VP. The real ones know.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the ones early on our reading journey, I bought it. We were somewhere together.
Okay.
And we were at a used bookstore.
Sure.
And I bought it.
Okay.
And it was
what is it?
Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro.
Oh.
And that was really early towards the beginning of my reading journey. I was in my reading journey now. Like, I identified as a reader at this point. But it was early.
Where were we?
No, we were like somewhere.
We were somewhere.
In the car?
Because I bought it in England.
Okay, then we were somewhere in England. Or Scotland.
But not... You had a different copy of it.
Yeah, I had a different copy.
Oh.
Where were we?
we were in England. Or Scotland. We were in the UK.
Okay.
And you did find it used.
Yeah.
I read your copy of it. I bought the British
cassette
copy
tape.
of it. Yeah, because it's the blue cassette tape
it's
one.
It's the blue one. It's the pretty one.
Yeah. And it matched. I knew I was going to end up reading more, and I wanted the set. You'll see.
Okay, very nice. So Never Let Me Go is a sci-fi dystopian type of novel.
Yep.
And it feels so ordinary at the beginning. And the writing stays... We've talked about Kazuo Ishiguro on this channel.
Mm-hmm.
How you're reading it, and you're like, this is taking a long time, and it's really slow. But you don't stop thinking about it for some reason. That man lingers.
He
and I don't know why.
I don't know how you do that.
I don't know how you do that because I can never rate his books 5 stars.
Yeah.
They're never a 5-star book.
Yeah.
But I can't stop thinking about any book I've ever read from him.
Yeah.
That's not true. I've always stopped thinking about it. But like, hyperbolically speaking, I love it.
He writes to like alter your brain chemistry, not to give you like a shot of dopamine. You know, like, and it's so true because what is it like? The Remains of the Day.
Mm-hmm.
I finished that book and I was like mid, and then like I don't know, doing something, playing tennis, and all of a sudden The Remains of the Day just pops in my head, and I'm like, what? And now I'm sad and pensive. Like, what's going on?
Same thing with The Pale View of Hills.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Why am I like thinking about? It's so random.
He's so good at it, and we learned that like that was his intention in a lot of his writings.
So if you want to go into a book that's slower but still going to make you think a lot, even though you feel like nothing really happened, Never Let Me Go is a really good way to get into literary fiction and into that world of reading. The other ones we've talked about are more like heavy on the plot to like help you through. This is our first one that isn't heavy on the plot, but is a really good example of literary fiction. Yeah. And this is our progression of our journey of reading. It's like you start with plot, and then we like kind of got rid of plot, kind of like your coffee journey possibly. You like started with a mocha, and then you like eventually got to
you got a bit of the fluff.
Yeah.
Now you're approaching black.
Yeah. Literally. It's like kind of how it happened with me. It's like, I want it to be distilled down to like the rawest form of literary.
That's a good analogy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ooh, I think we jumped to Lessons in Chemistry.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. This is now out of timeline order for us. But that was like the beginning of our journey that you just discovered. Yeah. The next book that is a really good literary fiction to get into, doesn't rely too heavily on the plot, but has a good plot, is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis.
Yeah. Lessons in Chemistry is, also historical fiction. It's about this woman in, I want to say the mid-90s. She is a chemist.
It's way too late.
Really?
Keep going. I'm going to look it up.
Okay.
You keep throwing out these years.
There were like TVs and stuff.
Yeah, but it was like old time TV. That feels like a big jump. 90s to 20s is crazy.
I said 90s? I said mid-90s.
Yeah. Is it 1990s, like 1990?
Oh. Mid-1900s is what I thought I said.
No, you didn't.
I realized
now.
You
did.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I definitely didn't.
Okay. 1950s.
Okay, that's what I was trying to say. So we'll start over.
You might have, and I might have been wrong.
I definitely did.
Okay.
And I make that mistake a lot, so that's why I know. I make a mistake more than I'd like to admit. Okay. Lessons in Chemistry.
I'm proud of you.
Lessons in Chemistry.
Okay, so also The Seven Husbands of Evelyn, Hugo, 1950s.
Lessons in Chemistry is about a woman in the mid-1900s. And she's a chemist, and this super intelligent and successful chemist. However, because of the way society viewed women in STEM, she got...
Okay, so basically, like, there was something that happened at the workplace, and so she was no longer at the workplace, and needed to figure out what came next.
Yes. Yeah. And she ends up starring in her own cooking show. But
using
like,
chemistry.
Exactly, and has her own take on it, and it's very like empowering for women and highlighting the role of a woman in the home and also educating them at the same time. So it's this really interesting, like, kind of thought experiment of a book of like it takes the societal gender norms and flips it on its head, and it does it in a very fun way.
Oh, okay. Oh, I love these books. These books are so good. Okay. Ooh. What do we talk about next? I think this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Go.
Okay.
It's yours.
Yeah, I do love this book. Next, we're going to talk about The Great Gatsby. F. Scott Fitzgerald. What?
F. Scott Fitzgerald.
F. Scott Fitzgerald. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. If you don't know, now you know, Mr. President. That's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah, we call Hamilton like it's our job.
Yeah. The Great Gatsby is about this man named Gatsby, and it's about the Roaring Twenties in New York. We know this is the 20s.
Because the Great Gatsby is the 1920s, and the 1920s is Great Gatsby. Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
So, how do I haven't talked about it in so long. The words in this book, the way this book is written, I still feel like it doesn't get enough praise. And maybe that's because we're forced to read it as kids.
We were forced to read it, and I did not like... Well, okay. Can I tell you my journey as a 16 or 17-year-old reading this book?
Where's that?
Okay, so I was reading it, and I remember being like, what is happening? This man, Nick Carraway, is just talking, and I actually don't care. And now they're taking a drive somewhere, and they're like these glasses on a billboard that I'm supposed to care about. Like, I remember like learning the symbolism and being a little embarrassed that I didn't pick it up.
Oh.
Yeah, no, truly.
Interesting.
And I read the first 3 chapters, and then life got busy, as it does. Like, I was involved in so many different things. So I didn't read the book. And then I read the last chapter right before we watched the movie. And I read it, and I was like, that's what happened? And then we watched the movie, and the movie was really good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Lana Del Rey popped off.
Yep.
One of my favorite scenes is, like, the one in the bedroom where they're like just throwing
Yeah.
It was like so artistic, and I was like, art.
Oh my goodness, and then she cries.
Yes. It's so good. So I was like, why did I even have to read the book when this exists? So that was like, remember when you might not remember, but if you've been here a while, you know that I didn't read for a while because movies and TV felt like they did the same thing.
Oh.
Then I was tutoring a student and working with a student who had to read this book, so I started reading it with her again. And my jaw was on the floor by how the words were put on the page. Yep. Every word was so deliberate, and it was beautiful.
Yeah. Mouth ajar. Agape,
if you will. Yes. Just on the floor. Yeah. The jaw is gone, actually. It's run away.
I reread The Great Gatsby right before I went to Spain. Yeah. And I was texting Sierra, and I was like, I don't remember this book being this beautiful. Like, the words were so powerful. And then the story is also good. Like, the plot is interesting to follow.
It's interesting, but I don't think the point.
I don't think it's the point.
And that's what I like about books.
But it is fun.
That's why it's literary.
Like, it's a good, interesting
plot.
Yeah.
It's fun. And that's why I wanted to, like, watch the movies, because I like the dancing and, like, the parties and stuff. The sets were fun for that.
Yeah. I think it's an underrated classic. Maybe it's, like, normally rated. And I've just been around people that think that weren't happy about it because we read it in high school. But I think if you haven't read it in a while, read it again. I'm very happy that I reread this book.
If it's like I want to get into literary fiction, but I want to read a classic, I think this is a really good one to get into
100%.
Classics with.
Yeah.
As well.
This is, I think, one of the first, if not the only, on this list, 5-star books. Great Gatsby is a 5-star.
See, I never finished it when I was working with that student because life happened, right? Crazy. As it does, like it did in high school. But at least this time...
This is a cycle for you.
Yeah.
You never completed The Great Gatsby.
No, I've never read it all the way through. But I did participate in a interactive theater experience for The Great Gatsby. What?
This is how big the book is.
Hey. Yeah, so I will read it. But that's why you gotta talk about it, because I haven't read it yet, technically.
It's so good. I remember the symbolism thing. And
everything's a symbol in that book.
Yeah.
Gosh darn.
And that's why in class I didn't love talking about it. I didn't want people to force the symbolism on me.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
Yeah.
It was like, and what do you think the grasses mean?
Yeah,
and I'm like, well,
They're watching
didn't
us.
notice it.
Like,
but,
is it Zora Neale Hurston's The Eyes Were Watching God? What's happening? Sorry.
That was good. Yeah, I was like, I didn't notice it, but I noticed this other thing that you're not teaching us is a symbol, but like, what if it is? I think it is.
Yeah.
But I'm not the teacher.
But you know what was good about that class?
What?
We could write an essay on anything, and as long as we supported it, we were
That's true.
fine.
That's
so
true.
that's good.
Yeah.
And that's the point of English.
And that's the point of art.
All right, up next, we've got... Ooh, you should talk about The Handmaid's Tale.
The Handmaid's Tale.
Is it literary? The internet said it was.
I believe so.
Oh.
I believe
You got
so.
so much calmer than you were a second ago. It was just such a jarring, like, shift in vibe from, like, the receiving
I
end.
took one deep breath.
Yeah, you, like, got sad and mad at me for not reading Great Gatsby,
Yeah.
and then you took a deep breath, and now you're calm.
That's true.
Okay.
I go through phases. I might be back. What am I talking about?
The Handmaid's
The Handmaid's
Tale.
Tale. All I had in my head was lessons in chemistry. Okay.
Margaret Atwood.
Yeah, Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood.
I was like, no one heard that. We're talking about each other.
It's a classic. It's dystopian, and I would say it's literary. It is a version of modern day America. If we had a like political upheaval that was replacing the government with a very extreme religious, specifically Christian ideology.
Oh, so this is like reflecting what's happened around the world with different religions,
Correct.
just within the U.S.
Yes.
And maybe not too far off.
Correct. With the U.S., it's a cautionary tale.
Yeah, big
I
quotes.
need to say that in a different way because that's so pointed. No, I'm leaving it. Yeah, it's a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we follow this one main character. Her name is June. She also has another name, but I'll let you get to that in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And she is a handmaid, and this is kind of at a time where a lot of women are losing the ability to conceive, and they're also getting their rights stripped away. So like it happens in small increments. So it's like first they can't have a credit card without a man, or own property without a man, and things like that. And then they just kind of get like relegated to the house, and they use the Bible as the like foundation for all these changes. And it's it's very biblically based.
So maybe I read the book and don't watch the show, because the show I started and it felt way too real. This was like what, in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
and I was watching the show and I was like, wait a second, this feels like this could happen, and this feels really stressful to me.
Yeah.
Like watch the show at that time because I was like, I feel like this is a possibility.
Yeah. So with the show, it's important to know that the first season, maybe the first season and a half, is the only thing that is like remotely canon.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a really good one. If like both Never Let Me Go and The Handmaid's Tale are good if you're interested in a literary fiction, sci-fi, or dystopian.
Dystopia, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Next is, I'm so excited about these that are left. Okay, Panenka. I talked about it last week, so I'm not gonna. Or was it last week?
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm not gonna talk about it too much today. But this is a character study that's super short, but so literary, so beautiful.
Why do we do that with books that are good?
Hit our heads with them.
Yeah, because
We're cracked in the head.
I think I just want to shove the content straight into my brain. Also, the people in the comments that recommended this author's other books, I appreciated that, because there's other books by this author, and this author is a musician.
Oh, that makes sense. I think like musicians, especially those who play jazz, write the same way, and it's how I like to consume media. Yeah,
because I looked them up on Wikipedia, and the name it gave was like their stage name, and I was like, what? I'm looking for this person, and like, yeah, it is this person. This is their stage name because they're mainly musician. Anyway, continue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm literally reading the first two paragraphs again, and it's just beautifully written.
Honestly, great opening sentence. His name was Joseph, but for years they had called him Panenka, a name that was his sadness and his story.
Keep reading.
These past months, the pressure pain in his head had been coming almost every night, building like an Atlantic wave that roiled
It's a weird word.
within his dreams until it broke and crashed through his sleep, shocking him awake.
Ugh. And then I just don't want to stop. I just want to keep reading it.
It manifested as a clamp on his face. That's really important for the show. Anyway.
No. Yeah, so it's so good, right? Like,
I'm just going to sit here and read the whole thing, honestly, because it's that good.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I love lit fic. And so I highly recommend this one if you want to get into literary fiction, but like to get to know a single character.
Yeah. I also...
What?
somebody find me this painting. I want this on my wall.
There's a lot that I want on my wall, actually, that are paintings from books covers. Like, that's all I wanted, basally.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh,
So someone has to
do that.
We can do that.
We can do that.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Okay. Next we have, this is a really short one, but is literary fiction and highly recommend. It's Recitative by Toni Morrison.
This thing is short.
Short.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Toni Morrison... Huh? Let me try that again.
Yeah.
You're going to leave it in.
You already know. A
lot of Toni Morrison's books, I would say, are literary fiction.
Yeah.
But I think none of them are starters.
Yeah.
I would not start with a Toni Morrison, like, right
agree.
out the gate, if you're not familiar with, like, that classic writing style or literary fiction in general.
I agree.
Recitative, on the other hand, literary, short, sweet, poignant, beautiful, wow. Period.
Pop off.
So basically it's a thought experiment on what your racial biases are. Have fun.
Honestly, that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so next, the recommendation for literary fiction is just choose a Claire Keegan or a Sally Rooney.
Yeah.
Like, read what they're about and kind of, like, the vibe of the story, and then just choose one, because both are great for the vibes. My personal recommendation would be Foster by Claire Keegan.
Yeah,
and
which we talked about last week. Sorry.
We did. And Normal People by Sally Rooney. I think out of all of them, those are the ones that, like, I've read and gravitate towards out of all the ones. But you've read all of Sally Rooney.
Yeah, I would say Foster, yes. And then for Sally Rooney, Normal People is the best starter to get into her work. If not Normal People, Beautiful World, Where Are You? I think is a good one, because Intermezzo's too big, and I don't love Conversation with Friends.
There you go.
So
those are our takes.
Yeah.
And then the final one that we haven't talked about in a minute. We talked about it a year and a half ago. Stop making fun of me. Is If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English. I love this book. It's by Nur Naga.
Yeah.
And it's written in 3 acts.
Yeah.
Read your trigger warnings for this one, for sure.
Yep.
The way it talks about culture can be also triggering for some people, because you're like, don't talk about my country like that. But it is interesting what it's like to be, like, a third culture person living in a different place. So, like, having multiple cultures influence who you are, and then living in a country that you should have all of the culture around it, like, known, yet you don't. And so I think it does a really good job describing that. I think I feel that really deeply. Like, I don't feel like culturally I belong any one place, and therefore sometimes feel displaced because of that. So I think it really resonated with some of those themes. And then it is written in a way that I've never read another book like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to
this is the one that I was confused about for the first.
Oh, he did text me. He was like, I don't know if I really like this book. I was like, stick with it.
Yeah.
Then, like, the next day he texted, he said, I understand what happened.
Yeah.
I read it wrong.
I truly read it wrong, and that really threw me off for the first maybe like 20, 30 pages.
Yeah.
And it made me want to DNF. Because I was like, I don't understand what's happening. And then finally it clicked one day in my brain, and I was like...
But then once it clicks for you, and it's purposefully you don't understand what's happening at the very beginning.
Yeah, which is why I don't want to spoil
right,
the thing that
telling
tripped me up.
What's happening.
Yeah.
But, like, after about maybe 4 chapters for me, I understood what was happening, and it, like, made everything sharper in image.
Yeah, I just didn't turn on parts of my brain that were necessary to decipher what was
Which
happening.
is fair. That's something that's true about literary fiction sometimes. You can't often go into a book and just breeze through it. It's not like a light, fun, like, let me just zoom my way through a book.
Yeah.
It is, let me think about my position in the world and how I interact with others and what this is saying about humanity. That's, like, often what's happening.
Yeah.
But the ones we talked about the ones we talked about at the beginning of the video are more, like, plot driven. You can definitely zoom through them more, and then as we've talked, it's gotten more difficult, I guess, as you will, but they're all, like, starter, I would say.
Yeah. We're giving you a spectrum.
A range.
And we're getting deeper, okay? As we started, we're just getting deeper, losing plot and adding meaning.
Yes, if we were to graph that, that's exactly what this graph would have, the axes of. Yeah, and those are the books we recommend.
Yeah.
Please let us know if you read any of those, or if you've already read some.
Yeah.
These are just some of our favorite books in general, but, like, ones that got us into reading, and then, like, hopefully we'll get you into literary fiction if you're not already.
Yeah, and we know there's so much more, so please
there's so many more. We could have talked about books for literally ever.
Yeah. Honestly, your guys' recommendations pop off. Every time I'm responding to comments, I'm like, and TBR, and maybe I'm buying that one now, and TBR.
Yep.
So keep it up. We love it. We appreciate it. like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
See ya. Huh?
That's wrong.
It's working.
What did I do?